In a world where humans and creatures coexist, there lived two boys named Ethan and Brian. They were best friends who loved exploring the magical forest near their village. The forest was a place where fairies danced, talking animals roamed, and ancient trees whispered secrets to those who would listen. One sunny morning, Ethan and Brian decided to venture deeper into the forest than they had ever gone before. They packed their small backpacks with snacks and set off, their hearts filled with excitement and curiosity. As they walked, they marveled at the beauty around them, unaware of the adventure that awaited. After a while, they stumbled upon an ancient, moss-covered castle. It stood tall and majestic, with ivy crawling up its stone walls. The boys were in awe. They had never seen anything like it. "Let's go inside," Brian exclaimed, his eyes shining with excitement. Ethan hesitated for a moment but then nodded. Together, they pushed open the heavy wooden doors and stepped inside. The castle was dimly lit by sunlight streaming through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns on the stone floor. As they explored the castle, they found a room filled with old armor and weapons. Ethan picked up a small sword, and Brian found a shield. They pretended to be knights, defending their castle from imaginary foes. Suddenly, they heard a loud noise coming from outside. They rushed to a window and saw an army of orcs marching toward the castle. The boys' hearts raced with fear and excitement. "We have to defend the castle," Ethan said, his voice trembling with determination. Brian nodded, gripping his shield tightly. "We can do this," he said, trying to sound brave. The boys quickly devised a plan. They would use the old armor and weapons to defend the castle. Ethan found a helmet that fit him perfectly, and Brian strapped on a chest plate. They looked at each other, their eyes filled with courage. As the orcs approached, Ethan and Brian took their positions at the castle gate. The orcs were fierce and intimidating, but the boys stood their ground. The battle began. Ethan swung his sword with all his might, and Brian used his shield to block the orcs' attacks. The boys fought bravely, their hearts pounding with adrenaline. Just when it seemed like they were outnumbered, Ethan remembered something his grandfather had told him about the magical forest. "The creatures of the forest will help you if you believe in them," his grandfather had said. Ethan closed his eyes and whispered a plea for help. Suddenly, the forest came alive. Fairies flew out of the trees, casting spells to confuse the orcs. Talking animals joined the fight, using their strength and agility to fend off the invaders. The tide of the battle began to turn. With the help of the magical creatures, Ethan and Brian were able to push the orcs back. The boys fought with renewed energy, their spirits lifted by the support of their new allies. Finally, the orcs retreated, defeated and disheartened. Ethan and Brian stood victorious at the castle gate, their faces beaming with pride and relief. The magical creatures gathered around them, celebrating their victory. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the castle, Ethan and Brian thanked the creatures for their help. The fairies and animals smiled and returned to the forest, leaving the boys with a sense of wonder and gratitude. Ethan and Brian knew they had experienced something extraordinary. They had faced their fears, summoned their courage, and discovered the true magic of the forest. As they walked back to their village, they felt closer than ever, their bond strengthened by the adventure they had shared. From that day on, Ethan and Brian were known as the brave defenders of the castle. They continued to explore the magical forest, always ready for the next adventure that awaited them. And whenever they needed a reminder of their bravery, they would visit the ancient castle, remembering the day they stood together and defended it from the invading army of orcs.